Hello, hello! Today I want to talk about the new Tier 10 German destroyer, the Z-52 or Z-52. Later on I'll show some gameplay, so if you want to go there immediately and skip this part, click somewhere that should appear on the screen. Anyways, this is the ship, and she is fairly good. I can't say right now that she's the best one, but she's definitely one of the candidates for the best Tier 10 destroyer, because, well, she has a lot going for her. She isn't spectacular in any one thing like the other destroyers are. At least she isn't as powerful of a gunboat as the Gearing is. She isn't as powerful of a torpedo boat as the Shimakaze is, and she isn't as annoying as the Khabarovsk is, but she has her really good sides, and I would say that the main thing that she offers is hydroacoustic search. It's a destroyer with German hydro. Yes, it says 4.92 kilometers ship acquisition here, but from what I heard, it is that in patch 0.5.16, which is the upcoming patch, which should probably release the German destroyers, she should get the normal tier 10 German hydro. The other German destroyers won't get it as good as the cruiser and battleship equivalents do. Otherwise, you know, the tier 9 one would actually overshadow the tier 10 German destroyer. So this is an advantage. This will be like 5.8, 5.9 kilometer hydro on a destroyer that has concealment of 6.4 kilometers. Speaking of concealment, compared to the other destroyers, only the Khabarovsk has worse concealment. The Shimakaze and the Gearing both have better concealment than the Z-52. The Z-52 is like 8.1 kilometers without concealment expert and the module. She gets, well, a normal speed boost, a damage control party, and a smokescreen that only lasts for 77 seconds. I say only because compared to the US destroyers, this is actually significantly less, and it'll probably affect your game quite a bit. It's alright though, because this ship is fairly good in other regards. She is very healthy at 20,300 HP. This should be like 900 more than the Gearing, which is a lot more than the Shimakaze. Well, it's less than the Khabarovsk, but not by too much actually. I'm not actually using survivability expert, so you can get this up to 24,300 if you get that one. But I'm not quite certain if that's a very useful skill to get on this ship. So, she has fairly good HP. She also has fairly good guns. She has 6 of them. 3 turrets of 2 guns, 2 at the front, 2 turrets at the front, 1 turret at the back. The Z-46, which is the tier 9 one, actually has 2 at the back and 1 at the front, so that's slightly different. But the angles on the Z-46 are pretty good, so it's not as noticeable. The turret traverse is really good at 11.5 seconds without expert marksman, so you're never going to suffer from that one. The range at 12.1 kilometers is also really good because she has shell arcs that are somewhat similar to what US destroyers get, so you don't really need all that much more because you're not really going to hit. She has slightly worse rate of fire than US destroyers do, and because her HE maximum damage is 1500 compared to the US and Japanese destroyers that are at 1800, her HE damage per minute is actually less than a B-hull Benson. It's more than a C-hull Benson though, and obviously Japanese destroyers aren't really, you know, in the run. But the Fletcher and the Gearing actually significantly out-DPM'd this ship. However, she also has really good AP. It's 3000 damage per AP shell, and that's significant because you might actually want to use AP on this ship quite a lot, at least as long as the shells don't bounce and penetrate somewhat, otherwise it's kind of not worth it. On top of that, her fire chance is actually higher than US destroyers. It's at, well, it says 11%, this is with Demolition Expert and both of the flags, so if you get if you compare this to the Gearing is 5% without any modifications and 9% with. This one is 11%, and if you plot out the number of fires you would get on average in a minute, they are fairly similar. The Gearing gets more of them though, but only slightly. Her torpedoes are really good actually. they have 1.4 kilometer detectability, so it's like the Gearing and the Fletcher. And they are only 90-second reload, so you have significantly better reload. The torpedo damage is a lot lower though, at 14,000. She has 10.5 kilometer range, but the interesting thing is that she has 69 knot torpedoes. So if you were to get something like torpedo acceleration on the ship, you would have 8.4 kilometer range, and your torpedoes would go 74 knots. And they would have 1.4 kilometer detection range, which means that these torpedoes would be scarier than the F3 torpedoes on the Shimakaze, or actually I guess the Yuguma, because the Yuguma also has 2x4s. But yeah, the downside is that she only has 8 torpedoes total, 2 launchers full of 4. But the range is good, the speed is good, these torpedoes, they're really nothing to complain about. They're not as deadly, but they are very useful in my opinion. Her rank tier is actually really good. I haven't really looked at the total numbers, but it's one of the best, if not the best, anti-air destroyer in terms of damage per minute at range. However, she doesn't get defensive fire, I believe, and yep, no defensive fire here. So it's not quite as good as like the Fletcher or the Gearing, because defensive fire makes all the difference in the world. But if you actually add these numbers up, this is 49 at 6.0 kilometers without advanced firing training, so this would go up to 7.2. And this is another 57, so you actually have 106 anti-air damage per second at 7.2 kilometers if you go all AA. And this is like another 79 at 5 kilometers. As a result, if something like Shokaku tries attacking this destroyer, she might lose a significant amount of planes, and this is fairly useful because she does suffer. She is fairly big, and as a result, she does suffer from what carriers do to her. Her turning circle is kinda garbage though, at 700 meters, but she is fairly fast at 37.5 knots. Let's check, is this with? And this is without the speed flag. With the speed flag, you would get up to 39.4 knots, so it's really good. And you also have speed boost on top of that, so things are fairly okay. So let's look at the modules and commander skills that I would recommend on this ship. Let's go modules first. So obviously use main armaments modification 1, you don't want your gun batteries to ever die. You don't have any secondaries and you really don't care that much about your AA ports. In the second slot, I use AA Guns modification. In the game that you'll follow, I have been using Aiming Systems modification 1, but really I don't think you need the dispersion, you don't really care that much about that. I think the AA would serve you slightly better. In the third slot, you obviously use the reload modification. You don't need range. You could use the torpedo reload modification 1, but I don't know, I don't think it's worth it. You use your guns a significant amount of time. You're very similar to US destroyers in that regard, especially because with Hydro, what you can do is you can sail into a cap zone, you can smoke, and then you can Hydro, and any destroyer that comes into that cap zone absolutely can't fight you unless they are the same destroyer as you are, because they won't see you. But your Hydro will see them, and you will spot any torpedoes on top of that, so you are pretty much completely safe. And you will push the enemy destroyers out. And you do this mostly by using guns. In the first offensive slot, obviously you use propulsion modification because engines are the main thing that you lose on ships like destroyers. In the second offensive slot, I always use steering gears because honestly I don't quite understand what you guys see in propulsion modification 2, because if you actually look at what it does, if you've like tested it out, it's not nearly as good as the description would tell you. And in the last slot, you obviously use Concealment Expert, because you really want concealment since you are a destroyer. So moving on to captain skills. On my captain called Jakob Klein. First slot, obviously, basic firing training. Second slot, last stand. By the way, if you're actually leveling like a German destroyer captain for the lower tier German destroyers, you might want to actually use expert marksman, because the turret traverse is fairly poor on the first ones. And I don't actually recommend switching from basic firing training when you're doing the 150mm caliber destroyers because, well, eventually you're going to end up with destroyers that have caliber below 139mm, so you don't really want to so-called waste it. In the third tier, I use Superintendent because you have 3 skills, and obviously you want more smokes. In the fourth slot, that's actually an interesting question. You probably don't want advanced firing training because you don't really need the range, since your shell arcs aren't the greatest. You might want to get survivability expert though, because you would get up to 24,000 HP with this, which is a significant boost of HP and survivability as a result. But I really like demolition expert because this ship with demolition expert and the flags gets 11% fire chance. So you're burning everything left and right. And obviously at tier 5 you want concealment expert. So if you have 15 points but you get beyond that, the question becomes what do you get then, because vigilance isn't actually as great as it is on other destroyers since you have hydro and you're not as bothered by torpedo detection, so you might not actually want to get this one, at least not as often. So I don't actually have an answer for you guys. You might want to go torpedo acceleration, but I'm not quite certain how often you'll get close enough. I don't know if it's worth it. So I'm sorry, I can't really tell you what to get for the last points. I think if you get to 18 points, you'll probably have an idea on what you want. So it's finally time for the match, and this is a standard battle on the map Tears of the Desert. There are a significant amount of tier 10 ships in this game. Gearing, Shimakaze, Chapayev, Montanas. Well, Chapayev's in tier 10, but whatever. I have a slightly different skill build here though. I am using... I don't have a 15-point captain yet, so I don't have concealment expert. As a result, I have 7.1 kilometer concealment range, which is a significant disadvantage because many of the other tier 10 destroyers are going to have it. On top of that, I'm using survivability expert this time, so I have 24,300 HP rather than 20,300. But I think demolition expert is slightly better. By the way, look at the minimap. I have a tirpitz selected, right? And my aiming is directly on the indicator. And if you look at the minimap, you can tell that the tirpitz's path is going to be within the torpedo range of 10.5 kilometers, even though the tirpitz right now is at 11.4 kilometers. So the torpedoes aren't going to hit her if the tirpitz turns away and goes closer because the torpedoes won't reach. However, if the tirpitz keeps going in a straight line, those torpedoes will be on point. So what you can often do is you can point your indicator exactly on the torpedo prediction line and then look at the minimap if that line ends up, you know, intersecting with the ship's path. And those torpedoes really look good. They look really on point. So I'm gonna sail around here because the enemies might have destroyers and I don't really want to get hit. And wow, that tirpitz, ouch. 4 torpedo hits immediately. I might want to... Okay, a destroyer is around. Okay, that's a Shimakaze at 4.5 kilometers. That's really, really bad for the Shimakaze because I'm now going to slow and smoke and hydro. Hydro means that if the Shimakaze torpedoes like she did, I will be able to see the torpedoes. It's still fairly difficult to know where to dodge, but the good thing is that I can keep firing at her while being in concealment. I selected the target and I'll keep, you know, pressing the left mouse button, but meanwhile I'll try to dodge as many of these torpedoes as I can. And I think I screwed up. Oh, actually no, it was alright. The thing you have to do with dodging torpedoes is that you need to go diagonal for quite a while. Otherwise what'll happen is you won't be able to move if you are on the course of the torpedo. By the way, that Shimakaze made a huge mistake. She stopped inside the smoke, inside her own smoke, and I am inside smoke, so I am not spotted, but I am spotting the Shimakaze by virtue of the hydro. And as a result, the Shimakaze is pretty much dead. So yeah, the Shimakaze definitely didn't know how to take advantage of this. Or didn't know that, you know, German destroyers can do this. And the interesting thing is that you can use this to push out enemy destroyers outside of caps. So actually taking a capstone from a German destroyer is going to be a really difficult problem. So this Montana seems to be turning now. It's a bit unfortunate right now, the situation for me, because of that Friedrich der Grosse that's behind the island. Her Hydra is spotting me, and as a result the torpedoes are probably also going to be spotted, but I'll try my best against this Montana. So unfortunately the smoke also is disappearing, but we should be able to deal significant damage to the Montana. And since if the Montana goes down, I will be unspotted, I think. Because the Friedrich is behind the island. Oh my god, these torpedoes, why were they so close? And by the way, I notice I switched to AP because... Wait, why are there still torpedoes? Oh my god. Good going, Atago. Very good going. Or I think that might be a Taco, I guess. But I don't understand why the Atago would torpedo like this here. There were not only me, but at least one other battleship that was within line of fire. That's really unfortunate. Well, I can tell that the Friedrich just went below 5.9 kilometers away from me, and as you can see, she is at 6.6, 7, 8, and soon she will be outside of my detection range, or, you know, I will be concealed. So now I'll try torpedoing this Bismarck that is having a sightseeing tour, because there really is nothing over there where she went. She just went into the corner of a map and nothing interesting happens there. What the hell is that Atago doing? Did that Atago just try torpedoing our Yugumo? Because it really seemed like she was trying to torpedo the Yugumo. What the hell, dude? That definitely looked like that guy tried team killing. They weren't really meant for me, I think. They were really meant for the Yugumo on our team. Fortunately though, that guy was able to spot it. So my torpedoes are on the way. I don't really know if I want to disturb the Bismarck with my gunfire, so I'll try chasing this Friedrich and the Tirpitz, at least for now. If it seems like my torps are going to miss anyway, I might as well fire at the Bismarck, I guess. I'm gonna stop here with smoke and try firing. By the way, at this point in time... Okay, yeah, the torps are... There's no way. She's turning. By the way, at this point the smoke on this ship is actually longer. In the released version, she will have much worse smoke screen or smoke duration than she has in this game. And unfortunately the Bismarck was taken out before I could do any significant damage. I say unfortunately because she was a really good target for me. So right now the smoke was slightly wasted here. Because the other two battleships are simply going to run away and I'm not really going to do all that much about them. I'm switching to HE because they aren't showing me flat broadsides and they are fairly far away, so the plan is to try to get as many fires as I can on both the Tirpitz and the Friedrich. And I think I'm actually going to start moving, since at least if they start running further away than they are, we pretty much have this game in the bag though. They have lost half their team, we have lost one cruiser. And this is even with the guy that pretty much tried team killing. And I think actually the Atago that tried doing that is the one ship we lost. So honestly that's actually an advantage that she died rather than a disadvantage. So I'm gonna go and spot the Tirpitz and the Friedrich again. And I'm going to alternate between AP and HE depending on how the ships are positioned. I can't go as close for a concealed fire because, like I mentioned earlier, I don't have concealment expert, so it's slightly worse than it should be. I think it would be something like 10.2 kilometers if you have concealment expert. I'm not quite certain though, because I mostly played the tier 9 one, since before the latest changes, the tier 9 one seemed like actually a stronger ship, since she ends up at 5.8 or 5.9 kilometers concealment. And she still had 5.8 kilometer hydro, but this was changed. She now will have something like 4.8 kilometer or 4.7 kilometers hydro, so there is at least a case to be made now for playing the tier 10 destroyer. Okay, so I might actually smoke soon, because that Friedrich doesn't appear to be running away anymore. That's also why I'm slowing down, so that I can try to smoke as early as possible. By the way, these ships are actually slightly armored, so you're going to get penetration damage from cruisers and battleships, at least AP, quite often, so you have to take that into account. I don't really know why I used speed boost here. I think I just misclicked or something. It's a bit unfortunate, but then again, we are winning this game pretty handily. And oh, we're actually capping the base, so never mind. This game's gonna end in a few seconds anyway. Because the Schimacas just kept game for us. It was a nice, short and sweet game. I think I'll make another Z-52 game tomorrow. Because I actually had a solo warrior match, but I didn't really want to put this into with the really long explanation. So I got 1557 experience. That Fletcher also did pretty well, but you have to consider the fact that this was like a 9 or 10 minute game. Also that Atago was the one that tried, I think it was the one that tried team damaging. And as you can see, it's a 9-minute 37 game, yet I still did 117,000 damage as a destroyer. It was a really good game. I did all the damage to the Schimacas even. That's really good. I only made 13,000 credits though. That's a bit surprising, but I guess it is what it is. And you can see that it was from the Takao, 8,000 damage taken. I really don't understand what the hell that guy was thinking with his torpedoes, but I mean, I could understand the one that hit me. Mistakes happen. But the torpedoes that went on to the Yugumo later on really didn't seem like that was an accident. That seemed like that the Atago was actually trying to team kill the Yugumo. But I don't know. There's not that much we can do about it. It is what it is. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This ship is really good. I like it. I kind of like the Z-46 slightly more because of the better concealment range. But when she has worse hydro, I'm not quite certain which way to go. I think I might still go for the Z-52. Anyways, again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I would like to thank the Patreons on Patreon now. Thank you very much for your continued support, the Poomonger, and I hope I see you guys next time. Also, I would like to mention that I'll do my impressions of the trip to Moscow to a Wargaming Fest later, like, I don't know, tomorrow, maybe the day after that. And I'll talk about, I had a chat with Evan and, you know, the developer panel guys. And I'll talk about what I heard there as well. Anyways, see you tomorrow.